What's up, guys? I'm Nick. I'm the graduate assistant at the CMU outdoor program, and today I'm going to show you how to use some of the gear that we have and how to set up a nice little campsite using all of our equipment. Today I'm out in Uniweep Canyon. Super beautiful, super nice. There's a little snow on the ground, but it's quite a pleasant day out. And yeah, let's get started. Okay, so starting with tents. We have two different kinds of tents. We've got the Kelty Outfitter Pro. This one sleeps 4 people, so this is a larger tent if you're going out with sort of a bigger group. And then we have the Big Agnes Sheep Mountain 2-person tent. So if you want like a lighter weight tent for backpacking, or you're just going with another person or even by yourself, this is a great tent to use. So let's start with the 2-person tent here. I like to roll them up into their stuff sack. It makes everything really accessible, really easy to use, and it's halfway set up. So pull it out of its stuff sack. We've got this nice roll, and all you got to do is roll it out. Now you've got a nice area to work with. There's going to be 4 components to your tent. You're going to have the nylon, the tent part. You want the rain fly. You're going to have poles, and you're going to have stakes. So those are the 4 things that you're going to need to set this up. The rain fly, we're just going to kind of toss to the side for now. We don't need to set that up quite yet. We're just focused on the main part of the tent. So we're going to take the poles, pull them out of their sack. You're going to put these together. There's several different poles in this setup. Just 2, actually. Okay. So we have 2 long poles that are the same length. And these poles are going to crisscross over the top of the tent. And I'll show you how to do that. Let me get all this kind of laid out and set up, and we'll do that in just a second.
So at this point during filming, I had to stop using the microphone because the cord wasn't long enough for me to use. So I'm just going to do some voiceovers for this part here, since the camera was unable to capture my audio after I unplugged the microphone. Here, I'm just talking about site selection for your tent. So you want to make sure that the ground you're setting your tent up on is relatively even. You don't want a lot of incline. You don't want a lot of rocks and bumps and stuff. It's okay to have a slight incline, but if you do, make sure that your head is oriented to the most uphill side of the tent. Otherwise, the blood in your body can rush into your head while you're sleeping if your head is on the down sloped side, and that's not good. So you want to make sure that your tent site is nice and flat, and that you're orienting your body properly. Okay, so now we're going to work on orienting the poles and sticking those into the tent. The poles at the bottom have this little peg that kind of sticks out, and each corner of the tent has a rivet that is sewed into a piece of fabric. So you're going to want that peg to go in through the rivet. So you're going to set up 2 corners of the tent to begin with. I like to do the 2 corners that are right next to each other. On the side I'm going to have my head oriented on, the corners that are away from the doors. And then you're going to bend the tent pole and insert it into the other corner, just like I'm doing in the video here. So you're going to have a bend in your pole. You can set it down for now. We're going to erect it in just a second. But then you're going to do that with the other corner as well. So you're going to end up with 2 poles with a nice rainbow type shape. And this is what is going to give us the stability, the structure of our tent. So now we're just gonna kind of bring both of those poles up in the middle. There's a clip on the very center of the tent that you're gonna clip over both of those poles, right where they cross. So that's kind of our center point. And at this point, you can already see it's starting to look more like a tent now that we got that piece up. We're not quite finished yet. The tent has seams that run parallel to the poles. And on those seams, there's these little clips. So you're going to want to continue clipping these onto the poles until you get around all four corners. So clip all the seams on, and then your tent will definitely look a little bit better. It's going to be more structurally sound. It's going to be sturdier, and you're pretty much ready for a night out in the woods at this point. So I'm just finishing the clips here. And voila, the tent is set up. All right, so this is just a quick look at the inside of the tent while it's set up and the zipper's open. You can see that there's definitely room for two people in there. A close-up of these clips on the poles just so you can kind of see how they're resting on there. And then I'm also going to show you the peg of the pole inserted into the rivet down here. So now we're going to talk about securing our tent, staking it down into the ground. We have two different kinds of stakes. The first one kind of has these spines coming out of it, kind of like a triangular type shape. And the second one is just round and just one solid piece. Different applications for both of these stakes, but before I go into that, I just want to mention that it's really important to stake your tent down. Um, you can see it here kind of flying away already. Even just a little bit of wind can move these things. They kind of become like a kite. So the stake with the spines is really good for softer ground if you're kind of staking down into sand or something soft like that. The other ones are good for really solid ground. So ground that's seen a lot of use and is kind of compacted, which is kind of the case where I'm at in this video. So we're going to use the round stakes and not the ones with the spines. Okay, so here I'm just using a rock to drive this stake into the ground. You can use a rock, you can use a mallet, you can use pretty much anything, but it's going to be helpful. Here, I'm issuing a warning to people about driving their stakes into the ground. If you get to a point where your stake is not progressing and it's stuck, it probably means that you're hitting a rock. So discontinue driving your stake into the ground, otherwise it's going to end up bent like the stake I'm showing you in this video. To avoid bending your stakes and to get a nice solid drive into the ground, you want to make sure you're not hitting rocks that you can't see in the ground. So here I'm just going to show you a time lapse of me driving the other stakes into the ground. It's super simple, but I'm also trying to bend them back into a normal shape since they were kind of disfigured. But now we're done setting up our tent. It's going to be nice and stable, and the next thing we're going to do is put the rain fly on. So the rain fly is sort of an optional piece of gear. You definitely don't need to use it every time you're camping. Pros and cons are that the rainfly keeps you dry. If it's raining, it keeps you out of the weather. It can help kind of break the wind if it's a little blustery out. It can also help hold some heat in your tent if it's chilly out. However, the tent does have two mesh windows in the top. So if you want to chill out and look at the stars, it's a really nice night, really clear. You don't need to put the rainfly on. So totally up to you. Kind of gauge what the weather is doing, gauge how you're feeling, do whatever. Okay, so to attach the rainfly, you're going to use the buckles that are on the corners of it. On the tent is the receiving end of each buckle. There's two different colors on the tent and on the rainfly. They're color coded, so you want to make sure you're matching the colors. There's an orange one, and then there's a gray one. So you want to make sure that you're matching up the colors. It's super easy. And by being intentional about matching up the colors, you can make this process a lot more efficient. You also want to make sure that the zippers on the rainfly are in line with the doors of the tent. So the spots that have zippers on the tent should be congruent with the spots on the rainfly that have zippers as well. So the next step is just to make sure your rain fly is unfurled. Again, we're paying attention to the buckles, making sure that the buckles on the corner of our rain fly are going to coincide with the corners of our tent. You're going to throw it up kind of like a sheet or a blanket that you're putting on your bed and just kind of toss it over the top of the tent. Just like that. Nice and easy. This can be a little more difficult in the wind, but usually it's not too bad. And then you're going to clip the buckles in from the rain fly to the tent and attach it. Awesome. So now we're going to do the doors of the tent, which are also called the vestibules. For this, you're just going to need a couple of extra stakes, and you're going to just stake out the doors the same way you did with the corners of the tent, and then you've got your rain fly doors essentially. So again, the last step is just staking out the vestibules. So you want the tent, or the rain fly rather, to be fairly tight. And you want to have a good connection point with your stake. Again, we're just going to be driving this into the ground with a tool, like a rock or a mallet. And then our tent setup is pretty much complete. Another optional piece here is you can roll one of the doors of the vestibule up into the tent. This kind of creates just a more open configuration if you don't want the full rain fly on. So this is just, again, a feature that you can use if you want to create just a little more airflow in the tent. So that's it for this video, guys. Hopefully this helps you explain to people how to set the tents up. Hopefully you guys will use this on your trips and for students. The 4-person tents, just a quick note, are pretty much the same as the 2-person tents. They're easy to set up, and most of the components are the same. They have the same pieces, and this is essentially the same thing you're going to do for the 4-person tents.